Alright, so I'm going to go over tips with you today. First tip is going to be really talking about the reflexive property and how to use that. Second one will be vertical angles. Third one will be dealing with different kinds of bisectors. And then in this, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the structure of proofs and what I expect of you and those kinds of things as we're looking through these. So let's start with number one. When you have a proof, you're going to have usually a given and what you're trying to prove. So given is what you start with. Okay, these are the pieces you begin with, and then your proof is your kind of your destination. When you get to the formal proof, we're going to put it in a table format. You have your statements on the left side, your reasons on the right-hand side, and your first statement, when you write the proofs, it doesn't have to be this way, but this is the way I'm going to ask you to do it. For your first statement, state your givens. So whatever is written in givens, you're going to state your givens, and your reason is going to be given. That's kind of how I want you to start your proofs. So one thing you always want to look at when you're looking for triangle congruence is a shared side. And so here we have this shared side between two triangles. And when they share a side, obviously that side is congruent to itself. And when you have something like that, a statement where something is congruent to itself, and we see that in statement 2 here, BD is congruent to BD. The reason that you want to give is what I have for proof tip 1, the reflexive property of congruence. And in the past, you may have done stuff like this and just put reflexive property, but I want us all to put reflexive property of congruence. That's the kind of the statement. I'm okay if you abbreviate some stuff, like put prop instead of property. I'm okay if you write the congruent symbol instead of writing out congruence. Okay, and so we have that. Really, before you get into writing this formal proof, you want to definitely think through and mark up the diagram. If there's no diagram here, you're going to want to draw one. So here we definitely have a diagram. So AD, that's this length, is congruent to BC. That's given to us. AB is congruent to CD. And then we said that we have the shared side. And just as you guys did on homework before, we thought, okay, something's congruent to something. What's the reason here? And there's 5 reasons we can choose from, and you want to be aware of those 5 reasons. You got side, 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 angle, angle, side, angle, and hypotenuse leg. Those are the only 5 reasons out there. You want to know that those are the ones we can use. The ones we can't use, angle, angle, side, or side, side, angle, or it's reverse, angle, side, side. Okay. So which one can we use here? Definitely, side, side, side is going to work out, and that's what we're going to use in our proof. And so what triangle, like I didn't, usually there's a little more here. It says triangle something is congruent to, it should say what the other triangle is. I left it blank just to get you guys thinking here. What triangle should DAB be congruent to? DCB, I heard? And when you do this, just make sure you're doing it right, because you don't want this to be the time where you're messing up. So is DA the same as DC? DA is I put a 1 mark on there. DC I put 2 marks. No, we don't want those to be lined up. So DCB would be wrong. And so you always want to stop and check, is my correspondence right? And so DCB would be wrong. What should it be? BCD? So let's check. DA and BC both have 1 mark. AB and CD both, yeah. So once you check a couple things, then you know, okay, I'm on the right track here. And so that your last statement in a formal proof will be what you're trying to prove. So I'm trying to prove that these 2 triangles are congruent. And the reason is side, 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 congruent. And we're using this using steps 1 and 2 in our proof to show side, side, side. Because in step 1 we have side and side. In step 2 we have the third side. And so we're able to get side, side, side from steps 1 and 2. And so that's kind of a baby proof because there's only 3 steps. We will work up to like 15 to 20 step proofs, but we're not there yet. So we need to start with the baby proofs just to get the comfort of this stuff. Okay. I'm going to leave 2 for you because it's kind of structured and you have some fill-ins there. And let's take a look at number 6. Okay, 6 is a little more formal. They tell you how many steps here. Eventually, I won't tell you how many steps, but you got 3 steps that we're going to look at. And what's the first step going to be? Copy the givens, right? So angle A is congruent to angle C, and side AB is congruent to side CD. And the reason? Given. Okay, so that's how we always start. And then just pause from that part. Don't do any more until you know why they're congruent. So here you go and play with the picture, and you're thinking which one am I going to use? Side, 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 side angle, side. Just get all that through. So you start using the givens. Angle A and angle C are congruent. I'm going to mark those. AB is congruent to CD. Okay. Is there anything else we can get here? They share a side. Good. So BD is congruent to BD. I'm going to write that in here. BD is congruent to BD. And what is the reason we give for that? And you can look back. We did that in number 1, right? Reflexive property of congruence. That's the reason we always want to give when we do that. Okay. And so we have that. Is there anything else we can mark up in here that we know is congruent to something else? Or have we gotten everything that we have been given and can discern from the picture? I'll just keep looking. Is there anything else? Okay, then can we come up with a reason, a good reason, why those 2 triangles are congruent? Which one? Side, side, angle. We do have side, side, angle. You good with that? No. That's one of the ones that that's on your do not use list. And if you don't know that, put that on your do not use list. But the one that won't, it's the ambiguous case because we can have 2 different triangles and they don't necessarily have to be congruent in that case. So what reason are they congruent? Yes. Side, angle, side. So if we look at side, angle, side, notice side, angle, side has 2 sides and an angle, but the angle has to be in between the 2 sides that you have. And so if we look at our 2 sides, see the angle in between them? We don't have that one, right? We actually have a side-side angle case. It doesn't work. And so, tricky Mr. Marsh gave you not enough information on this one. Okay, and on some proofs, I'll ask you to prove something that may not work. And I'm only going to do that on the easy proofs, not on the difficult ones. And this is an easier one, and so here you got to realize not enough information to finish. And I'm just giving you these right now. I won't give them to you later, like when it gets more complex. I'm giving them to you now to know, am I allowed to use something like that, side-side angle, right? And we aren't, okay? So you just got to check, when am I allowed to use something, when am I not? All right, so there are 4 others on here that you're going to do for homework. Let's go to the next tip. Okay, so tip 1 is on looking for shared sides, looking for that, using that reflexive property of congruence. Another thing you always want to look at when you're proving is for vertical angles. And you guys have already started to do that on your last homework, but I just want to give that to you a little more formally here. So vertical angles are when you have two lines that intersect and form an X shape, or they could be line segments. And whenever you have that, you get two sets. You get this set right here congruent to this set, and you have this set congruent to this set here. So you get two pair of congruent angles. And so just to look for that. Let's do, I'll leave 1 and 2 for you. Let's take a look. Actually, let's do 1 together. So on number 1, what would you put for the first statement? So AE is congruent to DE, and CE is congruent to BE. That's your given. And then again, just go to the picture, mark it up. So we got AE here, congruent to DE. We have CE, congruent to BE. Is there anything else we could put on that picture? Okay, we got vertical angles here. Good. And so go ahead. So number 2 states, hey, we got vertical angles are congruent. So go ahead and state what angle is congruent to what angle on number 2. Do that one. All right. Anybody do this? Angle E is congruent to angle E. Anybody do that? I know some did. Okay. And I know why you're doing it, and you're kind of right. But I'm going to tell you that that's confusing, because if you did angle A is congruent to angle D, I know which angle you're talking about. But if you say angle E, there's a lot of angles happening around E, right? Are you saying that, oh, this angle is congruent to itself and use the reflexive property? Are you saying that this angle is equal to this angle? I know that's what you mean. Are you saying that this angle up here is equal to this angle, or congruent? So there's confusion. So when you have a site like this, you're going to have to use more than 1 letter. You have to use 3 letters. So if I want this angle here, I'm going to trace that angle, okay? AEC. So E is where the site of the angle is, and it'll always be your middle letter. But I'm going to use AEC to represent that angle on the left-hand side. And so what would the one on the right-hand side be? BED. All right. You could also do DEB. It doesn't matter. But if you trace, the middle letter has to be the site of the angle. Okay. Now it's very clear which angles we're talking about. Why are these 2 triangles going to be congruent? Which side angle side? Are we sure? Yes, because we have an angle between 2 sides. And so triangle CEA is congruent to which triangle? BED? Are you sure? Good. So triangle BED. And the reason is side angle side, congruence. And we are using steps 1 and 2. So in step 1 we have the 2 S's, the side and the side. Step 2 we get the angle. I have the first 3 are kind of writing proofs, but then the last 3 here are proofs written out that I'm telling you there's some errors in these proofs, and we get to look for them. And so let's look at number 5. Go ahead and read through that proof and see if you can find as many errors as you as possible here. You'll just read through it, see what you can find. Or when the proofs get longer to keep track of stuff. Yeah. Right. All right, did anybody find an error? And one error. Yeah, Elijah. Why is that an error? AEB, let me mark it. AEB is right here. Oh. Well, AEB is there. DEC, it's right there. Not vertical. Aren't those vertical angles? No, they're not. Okay, why not? Well, vertical angles are formed when you have only two segments crossing. And how many segments do we have? BD, E's on BD, right? But is E on CA? No, if I connect CA, there's my vertical angle. Okay, and so E is kind of is not on the segment A to C, and that's why we're not getting the vertical angle. So you got to look out for that. And just because there's an intersection there doesn't always mean you get vertical angles. And so we're going to write this. These are not vertical angles. Okay, and so that's the problem with this right here. Are there any other problems? Say they were vertical angles. Would there be any other problems with this? Yeah, Luis. You can't. Yeah, this is on our do not use list. Okay. So those were the two errors that we had to find on that one. Okay. So I had a question on number 1. The question was, do we have to do this kind of thing with parentheses and labeling our steps? The answer is yes. Right now, I know it seems pretty obvious, but when we get to some bigger, more complicated proofs, it's going to be something that's helpful. And as we get to them, you'll see me using them and talking through when to use them and how to use them, okay? But yes, we do need that. Okay, yeah. Okay, so we're making a statement on number 3, but that statement is relying on step 1 and 2. Right? How can I say side angle side? Well, I could say the two sides from step 1 because I have that here. And why can I say the angle? That's from step 2. And it'll become a little more clear when we get to the more complicated proofs where those steps come from. Let's go to our last tip for the day, bisectors. So there are two kinds of, or there are two things you can bisect. You can bisect a segment, or you can bisect an angle. Bisect means to cut in half, right? So if we're bisecting an angle, then we're going to get two congruent angles. That's important. If we bisect a segment, then we're going to get two congruent segments. Make sure you don't mix those up. If you have an angle bisector, you don't want to say a segment is congruent. You want to say an angle is congruent to an angle. If you have an angle bisector, you don't want to say a segment is congruent to a segment. You want to say an angle, right? So segment bisector may go by the name segment bisector, or we may call it a midpoint. The midpoint kind of does the same job, right? It divides a segment in half. So you want to look for either or in that case. All right. On this one, let's start with 5. Okay. So 5 has no structure in the proof. It doesn't tell you how many steps there are. We get to pick that. We have some freedom. What's important when you write a proof, though, is that your first step is the given. So we're going to write E is the midpoint of AD and of CB. And the reason would be given. Okay. And you start there. We know our proof is going to end with triangle ACE is congruent to some other triangle. We're not sure yet on the reason. So you just kind of want to put that aside and just start working with marking this graph up. What can we say is congruent to what in this picture, in the diagram? AE is congruent to what? ED. Why? Because he's the midpoint of AD. There you go. What else can we mark? CE is congruent to BE. Why? Of what? No. Okay. Careful. CE is congruent to BE, not because it's the midpoint of AD, because it's the midpoint of CB, right? That's where that's coming from. Good. Just making you be a little more precise with your language. What else? Lindsay. So what angle is congruent to what angle? Don't say angle E is congruent to angle E. There you go. Because their vertical angles are congruent, right? So say more than vertical angles. Say vertical angles are congruent. That's our statement. So practice even saying that. Okay. So why are the triangles congruent? Why? Okay. So side angle side. And then what's our congruent statement? ACE is congruent to DEB. Good with that? Let's check. Is AC congruent to DE? AC and DE, no, that's not what we want, right? So we need to be careful with that correspondence. What should it be? D, B, E. Check is D, AC, and B, yeah, and D. Try to check another one, maybe CE and BE. Yep. Okay. So that's looking better. All right. So we need some statements here. What do you think a good statement would be? Angle AEC is congruent to angle what? DEB. Why? Why? Reflexive is when it's the same exact thing. So if I said angle AEC is congruent to itself, AEC and AEC, then that's reflexive property. But here we're not doing that. These are actually different locations, not the same exact thing. What's our reason? Look at proof tip number 2. Vertical angles are congruent. Okay. What else do we need? Luis? C, E, C what? Good. Why? Because Where does it say bisect? I don't see that. I just looking at the wording here. Ty, help him out. What do you say? Okay, so we're using the idea of midpoint. And notice in statement 1, we state it's at midpoint. And so we're relying on step 1 now, right? And here's what you write. Definition of midpoint. We're using. And we're relying on only step 1 because that's where it's stated that we had a midpoint. Okay? What else? Now, so can I go and jump and say triangles are congruent because of side, angle, side now? No, because our proof has angle and side. We need another side statement, right? There. If it has the same reason. Does it have the same reason? Yes, so what would it be? Okay. And so you're allowed to, you can create a new line or you can use the same one if it has the same reason. It's got the same reason, so we'll just use it for line 3. And now do we have enough to prove? Yes, so then we go to our proof, our ending statement, triangle A, God bless you, CE is congruent to triangle DBE. And the reason is side angle side congruence. And what steps do you think we're relying on to say side angle side? Only 2 and 3, not step 1. Step 1 we used, step 3 relied on step 1, right? But step 2 and 3 is where we actually have our congruence statements. Good. Okay, I want everybody to try, on this page, try number 1. Okay, first statement, what are we going to put? Just copy the given. AD bisects CB, and angle A is congruent to angle D. They kind of lead us a little bit through the proof. Sorry. So we can kind of rely on what they're saying here. So the second reason they're saying vertical angles are congruent. So you guys see vertical angles in here? Yeah. And so should we write angle E is congruent to angle E? No. Hope, what should we write? Oh, hold on. Hope, what should we write? AEC is congruent to which one? What did you say? Good. And I put triangle. Oops. Let's fix that again. Angle BED. Okay. Then they say definition of segment bisectors. So here they're relying on step 1 because that's where it's stating we have an angle bisector. And so what's congruent to what based on a definition of a segment bisector? Say that again. CE is congruent to BE. Do you guys agree with that? That this is congruent to that? Or should it be AE is congruent to DE? Which one's being bisected? CB. Okay, so we're good. I'm just stopping and making sure you see that, right? Don't go with the other one because it says, yes, it does say AD, But AD is not the one being bisected. CB, whatever comes after that, is the one that's being cut in half, okay? And we cut it in half. Good. All right, so what's our, do we have enough information? Are you serious? No, not enough information? Are you sure? AD bisects CB. Can we get anything else? I don't see it either. So that's as far as we can go. Man, not fun when it doesn't work. But it is important for us to realize when it doesn't. What's that? You guys see something? Oh, we do. Good. I'm wanting you guys to think. I'm not. I don't want to be the only thinker here. So we do have enough. Why? I need to mark something else, huh? Angle A is congruent to angle D. All right. Are they congruent? Why? Because what? Okay, I mean, are the triangles congruent? Why? Are the triangles congruent? Angle, angle, side congruence, which relies on which steps? 1, 2, and 3. And finish it for homework, okay, guys? Finish. So those 3 proof 1, proof 2, and proof 3 tips, okay?